Move on to the next topic, which is nationally consistent assessment tools. And to present this one is Sue Sizer, Compliance Officer from Energy Safe Victoria. Sue's history is that she was an A-grade electrician and a licensed electrical inspector and a Victorian trade teacher in the TAFE system for 10 years. We'll hear about a national assessment for electrical qualification, the national training package, national licensing recognition, and the work Sue has been doing with EOS and service providers in formulating the assessment process. Would you make a welcome, Sue Sizer?
He's a bit taller than me. Okay, I got told I've got the graveyard shift. I got told yesterday that probably at this shift at this time of the day, I'm going to have to talk loud because everybody's going to be snoring. And that's even before I start. But instead, I think I've got the hardest act of the day to follow. Wasn't Josh great? So well done, Josh. Okay, so today I'm going to be presenting on a nationally consistent electrician's assessment. So in particular, I'm talking about the Certificate 3 Electrotechnology Electrician, the outcome for an A-class licence. So in Australia, of course, we've got a national training package, we've got mutual recognition of licensing, and of course we've got national licensing on the horizon. So it makes sense to have a nationally consistent assessment for that qualification. That'll give our licensing and regulatory bodies, industry and the general public confidence that every person who gets a licence in this country has reached a particular benchmark. So just to start off, a little bit of history. ERAC, back in 2001, put out a licensing policy and some associated documents. Basically, this is when training packages first came in, and ERAC were concerned that with the flexibility of the training packages, that the apprentices coming through might not get that full range of skills and knowledge they needed for when they get that unrestricted licence to be able to work across a variety of industries. So that policy, amongst other things, listed 32 critical capabilities to be assessed in a capstone assessment. Also in those documents were some actual requirements on those capstone assessments. For example, auditing arrangements, approval of assessment tools and independence of the assessor. Now, all the states who are on ERAC signed up to that, but look, a few people have spoken both yesterday at the forums and today about, you have policies, but they're interpreted differently in different states. And of course, if there's nobody there to police them, do they actually get implemented or not? So, look, this policy came in 2001. We admit that was a long time ago. When this policy was released, the Twin Towers were still standing, and no one had ever heard of an iPod. So, as you say, it was a long time ago. Over that time, some things changed, some stayed the same. Parts of that policy, some things were never implemented, some things have changed, been bypassed, forgotten over the years. What hasn't changed is the expectation of the general public that we achieve, there's a fundamental requirement for achieving those safe outcomes. So over the years, we've also had training package changes. When that ERAC policy came in, we were on the 99 package, and the final unit in that, of course, was 505. We've moved through the 07 package with the final unit of G005, and we're now, of course, looking down the barrel at the 11 package with the final unit G105. Now, being regulators, we know that all the essential things are taught right throughout that qual, but what the regulators were saying to the training package developers were we want a final unit where those whole 32 are assessed all in one go, right at the end. And it's taken to the 11 package to actually get that. Neither 505 or G005 actually contain the whole 32 critical, and some people are actually surprised to hear that. Now, most states are using that final unit, whether it be 505 or G005, as their capstone assessment, but not assessing the whole 32. So, with G105, we've now got the opportunity to get everybody back on the same page, and there's your cliche, Phil. We've got an opportunity to get everyone back on the same page, assess the whole 32 and have everybody doing something consistent. Now, I just want to mention quite briefly, because it's slightly off the topic but not really, in the electrical section, of course, if you're in training, you're basically working to two gods. You've got your vet regulators, which is ASQA, or Victoria and Western Australia also have state-based regulators as well, and then you've got your licensing or your technical regulators. Now, the reason I bring this up is because I've had electrical teachers, and the electrical teachers don't have a problem with this. They're electricians themselves and they're teachers and they get it. But they're coming to me and they're saying, our management and our quality people in our schools are saying that you only have to meet ASQA requirements. Don't worry about all those licensing and technical regulators. And that's not the case. So I just want to assure you that that's not the case. We are working very closely with ASQA and with our, in Victoria, our VRQA, our local regulator. We have memorandums of understanding with them. I'm actually attending audits with them. They're very aware of the regulatory burden and they're very supportive of it. So this is just a quick note to any RTOs who find themselves in that boat, just to give you a little bit of ammunition to go back to your quality people with. Okay, so it's already been mentioned today at one point, back in 2006, COAG instigated the transition to national licensing. Key priority of the reform was the alignment between the licensing and the training, and that the licensing requirements be embedded in the qualification. Now, that's where we're in strife in Victoria. We have our licensing regulations that state a student must complete the Certificate 3, Electrotechnology, and they must complete an assessment suitable to Energy Safe Victoria. And at the moment, they're two separate things. Okay, so we've got the situation now, a student could actually finish their Cert 3, finish their apprenticeship, and if they haven't finished their licensing exams, they can't get a licence and they can't work. And we've basically been told from COAG that that can't keep happening. So Energy Safe Victoria have been in the boat that, okay, what do we do now? We're going to have to find a new system. The only way we can bring our licensing regulations in line with COAG is to actually get an assessment suitable to Energy Safe Victoria and put it into the qualification. Now, I know that's what most other states do already, but it's a very big change for us. And we've said, right, what can we do? And that's where we've got involved with EOS and this concept of this, this national assessment. Now, I've got up there licensing and sort of the possibilities that could come out of the national licensing. My crystal ball's broken. I don't know which one we're going to get. And I've got there, does it matter? Of course it matters. I think it matters to all of us. But what I'm saying is it doesn't matter to this concept of a national assessment, because no matter what model we end up with, a national assessment will complement it. Obviously, if we end up with a full national assessment, full national licence, national assessment makes sense. If we end up with a driver's licence model, a national assessment makes sense. If we stay as is with mutual recognition, now we all know we have mutual recognition, but let's just say that some are created more equal than others. And quick disclaimer, I am not in ESV's licensing department, so please don't hammer me on this one. But the fact is, I know Energy Safe Victoria are not happy because of this whole concept of everybody's doing something different and we expect a certain benchmark. And I'm sorry, but if your state doesn't meet that or if your RTO doesn't meet that, we won't give a licence. So if we can get in this consistent assessment, we'll be quite happy to hand out those licences, and it will solve a lot of that angst and a lot of those issues. Okay, so where are we today with the capstone assessment? Basically, every state is doing something different. And while I'm happy to be corrected from what I've seen and from what I've been told, I think I can safely say there is not one state in Australia, Victoria included, that actually assessed the whole 32 critical in a capstone assessment. And the parts that we do cover are done in very different ways. And that's standard with teachers. If I took 2 electrical teachers out of the room right now and I just sent them outside separately and I said, can you write me a question on maximum demand? One would come back in with a single-phase domestic, maximum demand 32 amps, and the other one might bring me a 3-phase industrial installation, maximum demand 400 amps. It's just the way it happens. It's always very different. Now, I'm actually doing some university studies at the moment. I've just finished a Bachelor in Adult Learning and I'm actually doing a Master's in Adult Learning at the moment, and my thesis is on competency-based completion of electrical apprentices. So I've been doing a lot of research into competency-based training. And what is consistently coming through in just in nearly every article I read, one of the main issues with competency-based training is the inconsistency of the assessment. And it's a big problem. And it's very evident across states. It's evident across RTOs within the same state. And in some cases, it's even evident within RTOs themselves. If you've got an RTO that's across campuses, are you all using the same assessments? Look, I've even seen situations, and look, fortunately it was some time ago, but I've seen a college that if a student came back for a resit in a particular unit, they had to find out who taught that unit to work out what exam to give them, because it was just so inconsistent. So now, ESV, in Victoria, you might say Victorians are arrogant. Yeah, we might be a little bit, but I'm not arrogant enough to believe that our system and our exam can't be improved. So in making a new national assessment, I've been tasked with going and having a look at other states to see what they've got, to see what best practice is out there. And I've been really privileged to see some fabulous stuff and some things that are definitely better than what we're doing in Victoria and what can be incorporated into this assessment. But what I've also seen is that inconsistency. Now, sometimes it's not necessarily the fault of the RTOs who are writing this. This is, up here, one of the critical capabilities from the ERAC document. Now, this is the one that just says you've got to safely isolate a piece of equipment. Now, some people look at this first part here, see the word demonstrate, say, oh, it's a practical assessment. We want to see the student actually disconnect a piece of equipment. Other states have looked over at this other side. You can see that there. Oh, it's a written process. They need to write it out. And I know there's other RTOs have looked at that and said, oh, that one's too hard. We won't bother assessing that one. So it's not that the RTOs have done anything particularly wrong. They've just looked at that and all taken different interpretations. But what has to be established now is, well, what do we as an industry actually expect people to do? I took this back. My executive manager sits on ERAC, and I took this one to him and showed him. He doesn't know what the original one meant either, but I believe it's now been added to the agenda for ERAC next month. So there's a national assessment currently being developed by EOS in conjunction with VetAssess. Now, I'm sure most of you have heard of VetAssess. They were mentioned earlier today. They were chosen for this assessment because of their security of their systems. They do assessments for the Defence Force and for the police, and so that their systems are nice and secure, and that's why they were chosen. Now, EOS, I believe, has a plan to develop the knowledge assessments for the whole qualification. But as a regulator, I'm only interested in the final unit, so that's the one I'm talking about. Now, if you're sitting here thinking, I don't care about the Cert 3 electrician, what about my qual? I believe it is EOS's intention down the track to actually looking at doing these for most of the qualifications. But as I said, as a regulator, I'm interested in the final unit. I'm interested in G105. So the knowledge assessment has been developed. It is an online assessment. Now, usually when I say it's an online assessment, everyone goes, ah! Because I think every one of us in this room has probably done really, really bad online assessments over the years. You know, there's a few people nodding. You know, those dreadful inductions and OC health and safety ones, and they're multiple choice, and you don't have to think, you just tick. This one's not like that, okay? There are quite a few different question types. It is automatically marked, so there's no write a whole paragraph description. But there's quite a lot of different question types, including calculations and what have you. There is a practice test available for the students to have a go beforehand. It has double randomisation. What that means is that for every, let's say there's a question on every topic, for every topic there's 10 questions. So if you've got two students sitting together and they're both on their max and demand question, this will have one question and this guy will have a different question. Double randomisation. This person's question number one might be on cable selection, this person's question number one might be on max and demand. So the chances of two people sitting next to each other and having the same question is not going to happen. So, you know, what they call it, the slippery eyeballs, if there's a bit of, this going on, it's not going to do them any good. Now, this assessment actually went live. It was run for the very first time yesterday down in Melbourne. Now, I really, really wanted to be there, but I also, of course, wanted to be here at the forum, so I missed out. But I sent one of my fellow compliance officers along to have a look And I spoke to him yesterday, and he sent me a report, and I'm actually going to read a little bit of it out. The teacher from Chisholm, the college that ran it, actually rang me this morning to report in at 6:30 because he wasn't aware of the time difference. I'm not a morning person, so he rang me at 6:30. By 6:30 and a half, he knew that he'd done the wrong thing. Anyway, if you don't mind, I think it's worthwhile. There was a couple of very small technical glitches, I think, as you'd expect for the first time with this type of thing. But this is what my compliance officer wrote. He listed those glitches, and then he said, all of the above events were resolved by the staff at Chisholm Dandenong, and a satisfactory outcome was achieved. Bruce and myself spoke to the majority of students as they left the exam, and most of them gave a very positive assessment of the format of the electronic theory exam. So I think that's great feedback for the first time it's ever run. And any of the little issues we'll certainly be looking at and sorting out. Now, some people say to us, well, gee, those more complicated questions, you know, where you've got a lot of things to do, let's say a cable selection question, how do you manage that? So I'll give you an example, and my apologies, I've actually left a little bit off here. But for those who are familiar with 3008, the cable selection standard, student's got a cable selection problem. He needs to tell us which table 3 he went to, and then which item number or which row he went to on that table. He'll then need to tell us that he went to, in this example, table 7. He'll need to tell us he went to column 6, and he'll need to tell us he got a current of 100 amps. He'll need to tell us he went to table 27.1 for his derating, and that his derating factory found was 0.9. And then he'll need to tell us his final answer was 90. Okay, so we don't actually see 100 times 0.9. He doesn't have to type that in. But we know where he got the 100 from, we know where he got the 0.9 from, and we know he got the final answer. So we don't really need to see that working. Now, when I've talked to teachers about this, they've said, but what if they get the wrong table 3 at the start? You know, they might have a little bit of their method right through it, but you know, they've mucked it up at the start, they'll get the wrong answer, they won't get any marks. Now, 2 years ago, when I was a teacher, I would have had a problem with that. I said, oh yeah, little Jotty, you know, he deserves a few marks for what he's done wrong. But 2 years down the track, I've got my regulator's hat on. They've done all, you know, and I'm using this cable selection example, they've done this back in G007 or G107, whatever it's going to be. This is the final exam for their licence. If he gets this right, we're handing him a licence to do unrestricted work. If he's mucked it up, oh yeah, he's got a little bit of it right, but at the end of the day, he's mucked it up, he's put the wrong cable in and burnt the house down. There's no point in that. Now, that might be a philosophical discussion that teachers might want to have a chat to me over dinner about, and quite welcome to do that. There is a practical assessment being written at the moment. As I said, I've been travelling around looking for best practice. Peter Parry from EOS has been travelling with me, looking at actual physical facilities. They don't want to write something that your average college can't actually do, and to find out what each state really wants to see in this assessment. And so that's underway. I think EOS are hoping to have practical assessment up and running early in 2013 for you to have a look at. So, as I said, it's a big change for Victoria, a very big change. And so we started the transition to this back in April. Obviously, this electronic assessment has only just come out, but back in April we said, right, to the RTOs, you can start running some of our existing assessments now. Start getting the RTOs used to the concept of actually doing these capstone assessments. As I said, Victorians are very fond of their old system, and the teachers were very fond of the idea of they're the good guys, and then at the end, the students can go off to those independent people and they can be the bad guys. The teachers are finding it quite hard to take that responsibility. I'm carrying out a fairly heavy audit role, and I went to one fairly recently, and the assessor, who was a teacher there, he said, I'm so nervous about this. He said, I didn't sleep a wink last night, I'm terrified. This is the assessor, usually it's the students doing that. And I said to him, that's fine. Look, I shouldn't say I don't mind if you didn't sleep, that's not good, but I said, as long as you can go home tonight and sleep. If you lay awake tonight, knowing that you've passed little Joey Brown and you're thinking, oh, maybe I shouldn't have, then I've got a problem with it. All right? But if you're nervous beforehand because you want to get it right, that I'm very happy with. So at the moment, we've got 8 RTOs, and I think there's another 1 or 2 coming on board next month actually trialling it. We've set up a committee to oversee it because, of course, we're a government department, so anything we do must have a committee. So We've set up a committee, of course. We've got industry and employer reps, so we've got NECA, we've got the ETU, and we've got master electricians sitting on that committee. We've also got several RTO reps, we've got the State Training Authority, and we've got EOS. And we're overseeing this transition. Because not only are our teachers nervous, our industry are also nervous, and we want to make it a very transparent system. And really, as far as our RTOs are going at the moment, all I can say about them is that they are going over and above to make sure it's credible, to make sure it's transparent. And if I had to sum it up how it's going at this point, they're giving it the respect it deserves. And I don't think I can really say any more on that. That's as much praise as I can give them. So in your own states, with the capstone that you're running, what assessments are you using? Who writes them? How are they run? Are they being audited, and by whom? If you go back to the ERAC policy, it actually says audits must be done by an ERAC-approved independent examiner. Do you have one of those? I don't know. But again, and sorry, I hate putting lots of words on PowerPoints, but sorry about this one. I've just copied this out of the ERAC documents. This is their policy of independence. What that original policy said was that the assessment should be carried out by someone who had not taught that student. Now, that's something we've implemented in Victoria with this transition phase. Some RTOs manage that very easily, and as you can imagine, for some it can be quite difficult. But on this ERAC policy, if you just look at this bottom, sorry, I'm not good at pointing, that bottom sentence there, it says if it's not feasible for logistical reasons to have that independence, and they admit remote locations, it can be difficult, then the RTO is to apply training industry accepted standards for supervising and marking the trainees' assessment work. Sorry, shouldn't they be doing that anyway? That to me almost gives the impression that if you've got an independent assessor, they don't need to worry about industry accepted standards. Maybe I'm interpreting that wrong. But again, I think this is something that, to get this right, ERAC might need to go and just clarify what they mean by that. Okay, so look, many people have said there is no way we are going to get every state to agree to this. And yesterday and today, I've heard several policies that have been implemented that, this state won't take it up, or that state won't take it up. Look, but I'm happy to be optimistic here. And the other thing I noticed, look, when I was looking for the cartoons for this, those two pilots there, the one on the right, and I will emphasise, the one on the right, is it just me or does it look like John Shearston? Okay. Okay, so look, just to finish off, our stakeholders, our industry, regard a final assessment as incredibly important for this licence. And let's face it, we're in a high-risk industry. And as soon as you're in a high-risk industry, there's greater compliance, there's greater regulation, and there's a lot more pressure to make sure that those competencies are actually met. And I'm sorry, I'm a university student at the moment, so I reference everything that I meant to. All right, so basically what the regulators want is a system that recognises there's a fundamental need to achieve those safe outcomes. We need to make sure that everybody is reaching those safe outcomes. And I think that last point really sums it up. The confidence of stakeholders rests with the consistency of the assessment. With the national assessment, we can actually give our stakeholders confidence of training outcomes, that every student that comes through your college has reached that benchmark. Okay, thank you. Is there a spot for questions? Yes, questions.
You've done well, Sue. You qualified for the prize.
Oh, lovely. Yeah. Thank you.
Thank you very much, and congratulations. Do you want to just take a seat there? We just have a couple of minutes for questions if you do have some of Sue, so if you'd like to do that in the most efficient way. Do we have any? You've satisfied all their needs, perhaps?
Or I've sent everybody to sleep.
Or no? Do we have a question of Sue? It's not compulsory, but there's a man behind you there. Yep.
Yes, Lloyd Olive Kroner from the Skills Organisation in New Zealand. Is there a national moderation system or a national audit system that provides consistency across all areas?
Are you referring to the new one that we're writing, or now?
Yeah, whatever's intended, yeah, sure.
Right, yes. A validation moderation committee is being set up through the TAC, so via EOS. Peter Parry over there is probably a better person to answer this question than I am, but they're looking at having representatives, obviously from the regulators, from all the state RTOs. Obviously, we're not going to invite every RTO to that, because you imagine if you've got a committee that would end up 80 or 90 people, you'd never get anything done. But that will also have industry representatives and what have you on there. So these assessments will be nationally validated and moderated, yes. Which of course takes a lot of the responsibility off the RTOs.
Okay. Anyone else? No, we don't have any further questions? No further questions, Your Honour?
I got everybody's. Thank you.
Well done. Would you thank Sue Sizer?